Good morning, everybody. It is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2020, Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers. It's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And with that collaboration, reached out directly and indirectly since 2020 to over 300,000 fathers around the world with that team. So as always, say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Also, I am a featured content creator for the Fly Nubian Queen Network. Yes, that's what it's called. I was seeing about Fly Nubian Queen. Actually, today is Queen Latifah's birthday, by the way. 53 years old. I was going Fly Nubian. I'm going to think Queen Latifah when I'm sharing that. And with that network, has over 581,000 YouTube subscribers. And I'm also, we'll play it in a minute. So I'll leave it at that there. Good morning, Ryan. I said when Ryan came in just before we went live, I said, Ryan, looks like you're going to be campaigning somewhere, but it's good to see you. What's going on?
Hey, good to see you as well, brother. Things are good. For those that don't know who I am, my name is Ryan Knight, one of the co-founders of the Afro Caribbean Business Network. We support entrepreneurs of African and Caribbean heritage, really to figure out what stage the business is in, and help them create a strategy to grow their companies exponentially. Also an entrepreneur. I run a company called Detailing Nights. So we provide mobile waterless car cleaning. So we go to people's houses, their offices, clean their cars on the spot without using water, and our plant-based eco-friendly cleaning supplies. And yes, we have interviews happening today, so I had to step up. We're gonna be
the interview should have started 2 weeks ago when it was warmer.
No, well, it should have started in February. Yeah,
there you go.
Be ready to hit the ground, but spring, I feel like winter's sticking around ish.
Yeah, of course. It's got another kick.
The weather is, can't complain about this past winter. So yeah, man.
All right. So before we go any further, we have a standard here on Monday mornings. Ryan knows what the standard is.
Yes.
This is the standard. The standard is this. This episode of the Morning Vibe is sponsored by the Macmillan Group, providing mortgage solutions one client at a time since 1999. Buying, refinancing, or investing. Call them in Canada, 905-813-4354, US 904-586-5636. And also, let's take them off. And also, we also have to make sure we give them full rep. There's Macmillan Group. Phone numbers, then you have toll free, have website, the McMillanGroupInc.com, and an email address, raycmcmillan@gmail.com. So what's been going on in your world?
Last time I saw you, we were talking about the My Main Street grant, which brick and mortar businesses can get up to $20,000. And I'm noticing I'm spending a lot of my time convincing people that grants are still a thing. I feel our community is a bit jaded. They feel, either I've applied before and I didn't get it, or other people, or I don't have time and it's too difficult. So we've actually helped close to 100 entrepreneurs get their applications in. So trying to make sure people don't miss the money just because they don't get their applications in. But one thing I noticed with people that run actual physical locations, they are so busy just running the shop
every day. There you go.
Especially the restaurants. They're like, sometimes it's like, oh, my son handles all paperwork, or, come back at 1 o'clock when I've shut down, like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
It's shut down. So yeah,
it's interesting you're mentioning that, because you speak to a lot more entrepreneurs than I do, but I share with a number of them myself. And I always say, when you start being an entrepreneur, one of the first things you need to think is, who can I get to help me? Where do I need help? And there's like even grants wise can be helpful, but also again, there's a number of programs out there. I tell people colleges and universities, man, like I got to be honest, the Dr. Vibe show and what Dr. Vibe show would not be where it is with students from all over Canada and some in America that have helped me get it to where it is right now. So I think, and also another point you bring about longevity, people think that, oh, if I don't get the grant the first time, I'm never doing it again. No, it's a journey, man. How many people hit things on the first time? You learn.
Right. And that's the piece. Like the persistency and consistency is the biggest learning factor that I found of grants. It's keep putting, if you qualify, keep putting them in. I know it takes time to carve out an hour or so to get the application done, but then when those hit, it can really boost your business.
All it takes is one.
Yeah.
All it takes is one. So a few other things before because we got all of a sudden people want to be on this platform. They get their name out there. So this is a good thing.
Yes.
But a few things I want. There's so many things I got here. Okay. So you know what? And plus I'm using a new computer today. So people okay. All right. So let's do this. Please subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also follow the Dr. Vibe Show on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Also to advertise your business. It's not clicking. There we go. To advertise your business product or service on any of the platforms that we're on, please email me dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. Also, join the Morning Vibe Discord group where we continue the conversation in between conversations. And all you need again to email me dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. We got some other stuff going on too, Ryan. So you've been away for a bit, so we got to catch you up on some. So let's do this while we are here. Let's do this. All right, and that is the upcoming launch. A week from today, from today, the Indie Soup TV network is launched, and that is being launched by our dear friend, Dr. Tachi from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's going to be a network that's live on YouTube, Facebook, and Roku channel. And it has over 30 content creators, and they're doing their beta launch a week from today. And this show, edited versions, even back to the beginning, replays are going, back to the early days. It's going to be on Indie Soup Media TV, and also another conversation I host called Primetime Saturday with Aisha and Lala. 1 hour versions. So again, I'm going to tie into that. Guess who did all the editing for that? Not I.
Hey, you got to have your team.
Right?
That's the difference.
So I mentioned, guess who did all the editing for that? Who did that, Ryan? It wasn't me. Who did all the editing? Who do you think?
Well, was it Dwayne or
no? All the students.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure which.
So Ryan, in fact, and I think we have someone on next Monday. But even if Dr. Tachi could come on for a few minutes next Monday, so if you're watching live or on replay, Dr. Tachi, would love you to come on because I think we have some. But I'd love to see if we could slide her in just for a few moments in regards to that. So that's happening next Monday. What else is happening? Another thing going on coming up a week just this Sunday. All right. Black Marriage Day, 24-karat marriage. Paul Osborne and Nicole Osborne James are going to be celebrating Black marriage. And it's being brought to you by NASAcommunity.com in partnership with BizFunny, which is Nicole's property, and also greencurtain.org is going to be part of that also. So if you want to find out more information, I'll put it up right here. Got to get help on this because so many things to do. So there's that. And here's the information here. Sunday, March 24th, time from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Laz Authentic Cuisine, 48 Main Street South in Markham. There is the URL if you want to find out information. There is the email address. During the conversation day, I will send that out to all different platforms. So, and you missed them on twice, I think.
Yeah, because they're on this past Friday too.
And I apologize, Ryan. I didn't see your message while I was getting everything ready, but yeah, they were great. And I've been able to put some YouTube shorts from the conversation on the Dr. Vibe YouTube channel. So go check that out and go deeper. But yeah, so what else has been going on? We haven't chatted with you in a bit. Other than that, how was March break?
It was refreshing. The kiddos, I feel, tried to take at least 2 to 3 days completely off, because I know my son Christian, since he was off, he's like, Dad, why are you working all the time? Or what are you working on? Or what do you need to do? Come play video games with me. So picking some of the days to say, okay. And I showed him my calendar. I was like, listen, look at this day. It's completely clear. Put anything that you want in it. So, of course, playing Geometry Dash and Minecraft.
Whoa!
So it was fun getting to learn those games. Minecraft is definitely immersive. So
I love that description. Immersive. I like that. I like that. That's fantastic. Let's shout out Fitness IQ Cam says, morning. Also says, I think you should provide the intern information on Discord. Well, what I will do is I'll tell people, contact me, because if you just put yourself out there, you just like Ryan when it comes to grants. Yeah, I'm just going to apply for a grant. Why don't you go to the people that have the experience in doing the grants to help you shortcut the shortcut, right? That's the key. Like, for example, I was telling Dr. Tachi for years about this, and she's launching a network. And she goes, Dr. Tachi goes, I don't want to do all the work.
Absolutely.
So finally, the light ticked on, and now she's beginning to get access to. She's in Florida. Right. She's getting access to resource help based in Canada.
Hey, look at that! And like you said prior, finding those key people at the beginning that you can say, hey, this task that is just going to be a burden. There are people that are studying it in school that love to do it, want the experience.
And a lot of times it's required for them to graduate.
Absolutely, exactly.
So it's a win-win for everybody. They got to do it. And like people say, well, it's only for like 80 hours. Oh, it's only for 4 months. It's better than nothing.
That is buying back your time. Imagine 80 hours that you don't have to dedicate to something you can put towards what you're actually like building the platform, or putting together the content that already takes so much time. And now you can focus on it.
So I will I'll put it in the Discord group saying, hey, I don't know if you have, but I've mentioned many times, if you need help with short-term projects, there are different resources available potentially to you. Here's my email address, and then you can go back. So I'm just going to put out there, because, again, I could just say, go to this, this, and this. Most of the time, you're not going to have any. So I can set you up and even come on the call, the first setup for success. So
I love that. And ladies and gentlemen, gala season is starting to poke its head around, because I did see that there's 2 galas coming up. So the Black Healthcare Professionals.
Yes.
They're doing their big, I think their first ever Health Professionals Gala and Awards.
Yep.
So I'm curious. Hopefully we'll be able to get them on to talk about it.
Well, I have had them on my Dr. Vibe show a few times.
Right. But that was to talk about the launch of the directory.
Okay.
Right?
So you know what? Actually, the great idea. I will reach out, because I have a good business relationship with their PR person.
Nice.
So I'll see if we can get them on the morning vibe. Love that idea. Yeah, I will reach out to her today to see if we can get that, because they actually invited me to come to it last year. Unfortunately, I had a show to do. Like, Saturday nights are prime time.
Okay, gotcha.
So maybe this year, if they invite me again, maybe I'll do a replay that night. We'll see. All right. Anything else you want to catch up on before we go to break and bring our new, well, not a new friend to me, but to you and the others? Anything else you wanted to catch us up on that's going on?
Real quick, so Black North Initiative, they have their gala coming, and the BBPA, the Black Business Professional
Yes.
Association Harry Jerome Awards is coming up. I believe that's April 27th. Don't quote me. I'll check that and confirm. But yes, those
Well,
big ones are coming up.
look at this. Gala King, when are the dates? He just gave the dates. So, by
And
the way, Fitness IQ
yeah.
Cam interviewed Ross on her show on last Saturday.
Oh, excellent. And Ross is now the chair of the BBPA board. Ross Kadas, what are you
I
talking?
believe so.
Oh, okay,
I believe
nice.
so. All right. That's it for now because we want to get a little break. And we got a great individual coming to share with us today who's just written a new book, but I ain't going to tell you anything about it till we come back. Catch us back in 2 minutes.
You know, and that's what I feel like. You feel like you're the Harriet Tubman of the mind.
I am.
I feel like I'm the I'm one of the Harriet Tubmans of intelligent Black people. Like I want to liberate y'all from like being left behind and ignored and oblivion. No, really, the rappers get all the attention. You know, seriously, does anybody else feel this way? Like ignorant Black people, they'll be all up, you know, getting all the headlines on the Shade Room.
Overly sexualized Black folks.
Like the twerkers and the, you know, just people that, you know, don't always represent the best of us, you know, the diversity, you know, like people like Dr. Vibe. Like everybody should know about people like Dr. Vibe. Dr.
Really
Vibe he's trying to do good work for Black people. Dr. Vibe from Toronto. Good to see you, my brother. Dr. Vibe. Everybody follow Dr. Vibe. He has a great show. He's very good at what he does, and I have a lot of respect for him. The men who are also doing the same thing. I see Dr. Vibe in here. He's a great brother. Everybody should follow Dr. Vibe, by the way. He's a smart brother in Canada, and we need to follow smart people. So follow Dr. Vibe. If you see him in the chat, and Dr. Vibe, say your name in the chat so people can see you. I want you to click on his name, and I want you to go follow him, please, because I want these men and women that are doing the right things to get the support they deserve. Hey, Dr. Vibe, how you doing, brother? Again, I always do, I got to say everybody should go follow Dr. Vibe. He's got a great show. Dr. Vibe, I know Dr. Vibe's got a kingdom because I see your channel. I see you pouring into that every day. Everybody should follow Dr. Vibe, by the way. Look him up, Dr. Vibe, Vibe. He's a great friend of me and my wife, and I love this guy. Okay, so let me hop into this. What's up, Dr. Vibe? How you doing? Everybody, if you see Dr. Vibe in the chat, everybody go follow the Dr. Vibe show. Dr. Bob is a real smart brother and a good human being. I like the guy a lot, and he's very intelligent. And I think everyone should pay attention to what he's got going on. We got to shine the spotlight on the intelligent Black people out here that are really doing the good work. Don't just pay attention to the rappers and the celebrities. You know, a lot of these people are losers. Your true winners are your people in your community that are really having your back. You know, helping us to have stronger families and a stronger community. So Dr. Bob is in that category. So you might see the Dr. Bob show in this chat. If you see him, please go follow him. Okay. All right. So anyway.
All right. Shout out to Dr. Boyce and Dr. Alicia. And you know what? I love that our friend that's coming on today, at the beginning, I could see him thinking about what Dr. Boyce and Dr. Alicia were saying. And I said, that's good stuff. Because that's really good. So before we go any further, I'm going to put something up on the screen. So I'll give our friend proper introduction here. So let me just do this. I need an intern to do the production of this show. It's getting too much these days. So here we go. All right, family. This is who we have today. Morgan Campbell is an award-winning journalist, currently a senior contributor at CBC Sports and a contributor to the New York Times. Yes, family, the New York Times. For over 18 years, he worked at the Toronto Star and established himself as one of Canada's finest sports writers. Well, you know what? I just want to say Canada's finest writers, not just sports writers, writers. Displaying both a range and depth of knowledge, finding original stories and telling them with flair and nuance. He covered sports as varied as boxing, baseball, and soccer. Morgan's best work highlighted where sport intersected with off-the-field issues like race, culture, politics, and business. Now, he's just written a book. You know what? And I'm not giving him justice because let me get this out of, you know what? I'm going to do something. I'm not giving him true justice because there's our logos in there. So let me get this thing out of the way. Okay. That's better. That's better. Give man full respect. Yes. So his debut memoir, My Fighting Family, Borders and Bloodlines and the Battles That Made Us, is an incredible journey or incredible history of his family's multi-generational battles, a hilarious coming-of-age story, and powerful reckoning with what it means to be Black in Canada when you have strong American roots. So this is the proper representation that Morgan Campbell deserves. And let's bring him to the stage, Mr. Morgan Campbell. What is up, bro?
That's me. Man, I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Excellent.
We're doing outstanding. How are you this morning?
Fantastic.
Man, it's good. And like Dr. Vibe, you know, I've been on the show before. Ryan has, for all these years, has only been a face in my LinkedIn feed. So good to see that he actually exists. I thought he was like an AI bot, but no, he's a real person. This is awesome. This is great.
And thank you for that. And pleasure to meet you.
Yes.
So Morgan, before we get into the book and all that, share a little bit of your background to our family, because we know each other a little bit, but the family here doesn't know a lot about you. So please share.
In terms of like my heritage or what I do for a living.
Heritage and living. Let's care for both.
Okay, well, and they kind of go together. So in terms of my heritage, because I understand the show is international, but you're based in Canada, and it's a very, like, I can tell by the ads you're reading, right? It's very local, which is awesome, because one of the things I love is when something really local gets to go international but is still local, because like there's this Walmartization of everything where we want everything franchised and we want these big networks where everything looks the same no matter where you go. But I miss local, you know what I mean? And one of the things that I miss about like satellite radio is great, Heart and Soul on Sirius XM, awesome, but I miss WBLK from Buffalo, WGCI in Chicago, because there's something, they're very similar, but there's something very local about each of them. So that's what I appreciate about this show. It goes across borders, but it's still very Toronto, which is awesome. Anyway, yeah, so the best way I can put it is this. I was born and raised in Toronto. My parents are from Chicago. And the question I get from a lot of Black Canadians in Toronto, you know, because most of their parents are from the Caribbean, is, well, where was your family from before Chicago? I got 4 grandparents. 2 of them are from Chicago.
Wow. Yeah.
2 of them are from down south. I'm like, okay, well, then where were they from before Arkansas and Mississippi and South Carolina and Texas? I'm like, that's where they were from. Wow. Well, where are they from before that? Same place. Where are they from before that? Same place. So a lot of Caribbean Canadians have a hard time understanding that I am, like, my family is African American in the traditional sort of mainstream sense, but we are. There's not a lot of us here in Toronto, but there are some of us, and I'm really fascinated with the things that draw us across the border. Mm-hmm. So even if you're a Jamaican in New York, you might wind up in Toronto, because if you were a Jamaican, you got family in a lot of places, often Toronto, often London, wherever. So that's what draws you across the border. But if you're Black and American in like Pittsburgh, you probably don't have any cousins in Canada. So what's drawing you to Canada? And so with my family, my grandfather was a musician, jazz musician in Chicago. You know, and as a musician, you wind up going all over the place. And he got booked in Toronto a couple times. Was really reluctant to come here the first time, but my grandmother talked him into it. And then when he came, it took like one day. He's like, yo, I love this place. This is 1966. So this was like around this time, like late winter, early spring, 1966. And by the summertime, my grandfather, my grandmother, and my youngest uncle had all moved here. And then there were other kids, they were older. So my parents moved here a couple years later. They moved here in 1969. And then they started having kids. So that's how I got here. So I said all that to say this. Yeah, I'm a dual citizen. I'm Canadian and American, Black on both sides of the border. You know, and that's a lot of what my book explores, is that, you know, there are similarities and differences, and there's universal, but there's also very local. And so, like, the way your Blackness plays, the way you live it, the way society views you, there's similarities no matter where you go, but it's also very local. So being Black in Toronto is very different from being Black in Chicago, but it's also very similar to being Black in Chicago. But these are some of the themes I explore in the book, along with like the family dynamics.
I just want to jump in here a little bit. The last time we spoke together a while back, you were just beginning to write.
Oh, yes. That was probably like 2020. Yeah.
Gotcha.
How was the book writing process different than writing an article piece process?
2 big ways. Like, one, just the book is a lot longer. 2, as a deadline journalist, like, Like when I cover baseball, for example, so I'll choose the two farthest ends of the extreme, right? So when I cover baseball, I got to write some features, but mainly my job was just to write about baseball every day, every night. And especially if you were at a game, you just had to write fast, and you'd write some really good stories, but that wasn't your job. Your job wasn't to write great stories. Your job was to write good stories very quickly. And so in those situations, like, you never got writer's block, because there's no such thing as writer's block, because you have an assignment, you have a deadline. Writer's block is a luxury for people that have time, and so that's what I would do, and it's fun. It keeps your name out there. It's not, I'm not going to say it's not hard, but you do it enough, it becomes like a reflex. And so the things that I would have had to think about if I was like 18 doing this job, I didn't have to think about when I was in my 30s doing that job, just because I'd done them so much. Doesn't mean it's not hard. In the same way that, a musician can play a solo. Like, if I had to go play a piano solo right now, it would sound like crap. I'd have to think about everything, right? But like a professional musician, they can just do it. It's reflex. Same thing with like writing on deadline. Now, writing a book is much more difficult. It's longer. One of the big differences is when you write on deadline, you're writing essentially a first draft, maybe a second draft, and it's getting published. It has to be pretty good. When you're writing a book, you're going to write first drafts of all these chapters, and they're all going to suck. Your first draft always sucks. Usually your second draft sucks too, which is fine. And that's part of the process. And you have to kind of get used to going from writing something that sounds really good first time, one time, to putting a lot more time into something that is going to suck at the end, but you still got to get through it. And then go back to the beginning, figure out what works, what doesn't, do it again. So it's a much more involved process, difficult in a different way. One of the skills that carries over, though, is the writer's block thing, in the sense that creative writers might get writer's block, whereas as long as I have an idea, I can put something on paper. But that comes from being in the newspaper industry and just not having the luxury of writer's block. So that is the big difference, is the idea that you have to write something that sucks in order to get to the point where you can write something that sounds really good. And also just like the turnaround time between writing something, revising it, and seeing it published. So like newspapers, you hit send, they edit, put it in the paper. In the old days, you'd wait till you'd see it the next morning. Now you see it online almost immediately. Whereas with this, you finish writing and it's like months and months and months before you see the finished product. So there's, you have to kind of train your delayed gratification reflex.
I know Ryan wants to jump in. Now, you said you didn't know Ryan before, but Ryan and you are going to be good friends, because Ryan, I think your favorite sport is baseball.
I played mostly baseball, growing up. And
where did you play?
In Brampton. So
okay,
baseball in Brampton.
What? How old are you?
You're 41. Am I 41?
Okay, so you're younger than the guys I would know, because I was gonna say you probably played against my friends. Like, I was not big into baseball, but some of my friends in Mississauga were. But
also the Mississauga Tigers.
Some of them, yeah, and then Arendelle. Okay, high school, like Central Mississauga. Yeah, I grew up in North Mississauga. Went to high school in Central Mississauga.
A lot of solid players came out.
Yeah, man. But go ahead.
Well, I was curious with, one, did you give yourself deadlines while writing the book? And two, what made you now jump into writing a book, since that's a completely kind of different realm? So I was curious, what was the spark that made you want to write the book?
I'll answer your second question first. You might have to re-ask me the first question because I'll forget.
Yeah, no worries.
So what made me want to write the book was a couple of things. One, just in terms of like what I was doing professionally. I'd hit this glass ceiling at the Toronto Star. The kinds of bigger stories that I wanted to be able to do, like they didn't have budget to do. The kind of promotion I wanted from reporter to columnist, they just weren't inclined to give me. And every year was an excuse about, oh, we wish we could promote you. We understand you could be a great columnist, but we can't promote you because of X, Y, Z. And I turn around and they're hiring someone else for the same job above me. I'm like,
wow, right.
Okay. So there's only so many times that was going to happen before I had to make a move, either that or just settle for something that was, paid pretty well, but was unfulfilling and kind of left like a lot of what I thought I could do unexplored. So I wanted to test a different type of storytelling, tell a different type of story. And this ties into Dr. Vibe's question. The difference between being a newspaper columnist and a memoir writer. Like a newspaper columnist, your job is to know the answers, to have the answers, be really confident about why you think what you think and why you know what you know, right, and why you interpret these facts this way. But you got to have the answers. When you're writing a memoir, it's about the search for the answers. So
interesting.
It's not as a columnist, you're kind of bulletproof. As a memoirist, you're very vulnerable, and that's a big gear you got to shift mentally. It's a different skill set. It's something I had to learn through the process. But part of it too is from the standpoint of like stories that are out there, and this is for anyone, whether you're a writer, an entrepreneur, someone with ideas, right? There's something that you wish existed doesn't exist. You go create it.
Yes.
So for me, when we write about like the Black Canadian experience, there's a lot of, obviously a lot of Underground Railroad stories, Nova Scotia stories, and a lot of like stories about either the people that moved here from the Caribbean in the 60s and 70s or their children, like people my age, your age, right? But like not a ton of stories about people like me. Like there's not a lot of us, obviously Black Americans in Canada whose parents moved here in the 50s, 60s, right, 70s, etc. But there are some of us. And I've seen, because I seek out those stories, I see them. But I was like, well, you know what? My story counts too. And I come from some really interesting people. And I have like characters in my life that if I had written them in a novel, people would be like, that character is too far-fetched. That person can't exist.
Right, yeah.
Right? Dr. Vibe, you read the story. Like I could not invent a character like my grandmother, like my dad's mom or my mom's dad. I couldn't make that up.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so that was part of it. So I wanted to add my story because I feel like the story of my family and families like mine, deserves to be highlighted and preserved in this bigger picture of Black Canadian history, and then from my ego's standpoint, I would read books and think I can write better than this person. I'll go to the bookstore and be like, I write better than him, and her. It's easy to talk about it, it's something else to do it. So it just came time for me to stop talking about it and just do it and prove it to myself as much as prove it to anyone else. Now, what was the first half of your question?
Well, just before I re-ask that one, I love that you took up this project because a lot of times we're missing those stories. And
yes.
I wrote a book with my daughter, Jazz and Dad Start a Lemonade Stand, and it was encouraged because a publisher, he had come on one of our podcasts and he said, why isn't the Black community writing and publishing and just telling our stories?
Yeah.
Not having to.
Was it a children's book?
It is a children's book.
Children's book, they are where it's at, man. That might be my next pivot.
Yeah, and I was curious about the next project because is there any story as covering baseball that you would want to tell in like a long form?
I'm still kind of processing this one and promoting this one. So in a lot of ways, book publishing is like boxing in the sense that you need a manager. So my manager is like my agent at Cook McDermott. You need a promoter. So the promoter is like the book publisher. So sometimes it's a local book publisher, sometimes it's a big book publisher, right? So as a boxer, you got to figure out, is it better for me to go with Tyler Buxton and Ajax, or can I make the leap and sign with Bob Arum, in Las Vegas? Right. So I got the Bob Arum deal, thankfully, so
nice.
With Penguin Random House. But then you got to promote it, just like boxers got to go out and promote fights. But one of the other ways it's like boxing is like, when you watch a big fight, like Canelo Alvarez, he's fighting next month. And the minute he finishes that fight, assuming he wins, right? He knocks out Jaime Munguia or beats him by decision. He will still be sweating from the fight he just finished, still holding an ice pack on his swollen eye. And they'll be like, who do you want to fight next? Like, I don't know. I just finished the fight. But the thing is, too, fans get mad when you don't have someone in mind. When a boxer's like,
right,
you know what? I just need to take a vacation.
Yes.
Talk to my manager. This is normal stuff. Take a vacation, talk to my manager, talk to my promoter, figure out what's next. You say that, fans jump down your throat. You coward. You coward. Right?
Oh, you ducking the who we want you to fight.
Yeah. So for me, I'm still in the I'm like the guy that's like the bell has just rung. They've just announced the decision. Okay, I won. Perfect. Who do you want to fight next? Man, I don't know. Take a vacation, go see the doctor, talk to my manager, talk to my promoter. I have some ideas. I would love to write it like a story that's all about boxing. But this is also a business, and so there's also is pressure to write something that you think is going to sell.
Yeah.
And I don't know if a boxing story would sell. I would have a lot of fun writing it, and
project,
I could make a really compelling story.
Yeah.
But if you sell 14 copies, then your publisher's like, what do you do?
Well, sorry. The first question was, did you give yourself deadlines?
You have deadlines, but this is also the reality of writing when you have, how old is my daughter back then? Like a year old. And it was also during the pandemic, so there was no daycare.
Gotcha.
And I have my wife, she writes, she does a lot of different things professionally.
Can I just interrupt? Can you tell our audience who your wife is?
My wife is Perdita Felician, the
this
hurdler.
Yes,
you can see her at the front of that. That's her.
Yes.
So she's super busy too. So like, it wasn't like I could just say to my wife, all right, there's no daycare because it's summer of 2020. So you just watch the baby 9 to 5 every day while I get this book done. Like that was not tenable, So in a world where I had more control over my time, I probably could have finished this in 8 months if I had been able to treat it like a 9 to 5 job. But that's just not practical.
Right.
And so, pro tip for all the aspiring authors: if you manage to get signed with a good sized publisher that gives you a decent sized advance, the only thing that advance is for is to bribe your family to stay out of your hair while you do the book. And it probably won't be one time. It might be just like a week at a time. That's how I wound up doing mine. Was like, I would try to wake up really early in the mornings and do it. And that worked for a while. But like most of it, I would take a week and say, I'm going away for a week, especially during the pandemic because hotels were cheap. I'm going for a week, and I'm just going to work on this thing 10 hours a day for a week and then see what happens from there. And that's when I got big chunks of it done. So like the deadlines matter, but it's also normal to like blow a deadline unless you are, if you are the type of author that sells so many books that you make a comfortable living off of writing. Like if I was Stephen King, that I could hit deadlines because my advances are so big. My bills are paid anyway, so I can devote all this time. But for everyone else who's like juggling a bunch of things,
yes,
you have deadlines, but you often wind up blowing past them.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking sharing with Morgan Campbell about his first book. This one here, My Fighting Family. There you go. Borders and bloodlines and battles that made us. I have some business questions, but I'm going to put them to the side. I want to talk about a few things that I read. And I said to Morgan before, there could be about 40. We could spend the whole day.
Yes.
But family, pick up this book because for many of you, there's so many things that you can relate to.
Okay.
From The Quiet Storm, from BLK.
Well, I'll give your audience a quick, the quickest synopsis I can give it. The book is about growing up Black and American in Canada in a family whose two halves do not get along.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you think about each of those details I laid out, they're all ground zero for a lot of conflicts, like being Black and American, conflict there. Being Black in Canada, conflict there because most of the people are white. Being Black American in Canada, there's conflict there because most of the other Black people you come across are not going to be Black American. They're going to be from the Caribbean or these days more so, these days increasingly from Africa, but they're all going to look at you a little bit funny. What are you doing here, right? That's ground zero for a lot of conflict. And then my mom's family, my dad's family from the 30s back in Chicago did not get along. And that feud just follows the families across decades and across borders. And so that's what the book is about. And then how all that stuff kind of leads to me and the effect all those conflicts have on me and the sense I try to make of all these conflicts. So that's
there you go.
Synopsis of the book.
Hayden has a question about something. We'll get to that later because of sports question. But I want to talk about, and it's great. Nice segue.
Yes.
About conflict. I'm going to bring up two that come up in the book.
Yep.
Mr. Maloney, Birth of a Nation.
That comes up a lot from people that read the book. Go ahead.
And well, I want you to set it up because a lot of people may not know about Birth of a Nation.
Okay. So, long story short, I went to high school here in Mississauga. Well, I live in Ajax now, but I went to high school in Mississauga, Ontario. Went to the Woodland School, which is right in the middle of Mississauga, and they had like in those days they called it an enhanced learning program. So people that did really well on standardized tests, you got put into the nerd program, and there you went, and you could go to the Woodlands. And so I was a indifferent, lackluster student, but I did do well on standardized tests. So I got bumped up into the nerd program with all these like hard studying kids. So I was the fish out of water because those kids liked to study and I did not. Anyway, grade 10 history, we had a textbook. And I looked all up and down through this textbook for a picture of a black person. I'm sure you guys have had similar experiences. This textbook had one picture of a black person, and it was Ben Johnson. So I could tell that the textbook was made after Ben Johnson got famous, but before he got popped for steroids. By the time I got to high school, Ben Johnson was already on suspension, but he's the only black person in this textbook. So I'm looking through it. I'm like, oh, okay. So clearly these people don't think black people contributed anything to Canadian history. Nothing about the Underground Railroad, nothing about like the black construction battalions in World War I. Nothing. All right, cool. But there was a passage in the textbook about a movie called Birth of a Nation, which came out in 1915. And so the textbook discusses how Canadians really loved this movie, and it broke like box office records in Canada back in 1915. And some of the reasons it mentions for the popularity of this film in Canada, the technology in the movie, it used flashbacks, the way they edited, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm reading this. And I guess the average Canadian high school history student was not going to question any of this, right? Because it's in the textbook. Now, because my parents were who they were, again, Black American expatriates in Canada. So we live close to Buffalo, WNED, the PBS station there, right? In Black History Month especially, they would play all these Black History Month specials, and my parents would record
Still
them.
do.
Yes. And so I had all the access to all this kind of supplementary material, and I would watch these documentaries, Eyes on the Prize, American Masters, stuff like this. And there was one that I watched about the birth of all these negative stereotypes about Black people in the mass media, especially after the Civil War. This is where we got the mammy from and the jigaboo from, like the razor toting jigaboo, all this stuff, right? And this documentary gave a lot of attention to Birth of a Nation. So I knew what Birth of a Nation was about. So in class, the textbook says, oh, it's all about the technology. That's why Canadians loved it. And I raised my hand as like, does anybody know what this movie was about? Does anybody know what nation was being born here? And my classmates are like, no. So I was like, the nation being born in this movie is the Ku Klux Klan. And so this movie glorifies the Ku Klux Klan. So if Canadians are packing movie theaters to see this movie, it's because Canadians were racist. And the other kids were like, no, it was the technology. I'm like, are you people serious? Like, it doesn't matter how much you like the technology. Like, you're not going to like this movie unless you enjoy the scenes where they're, hanging Black people from trees or whatever. And that movie, too, did not have any Black actors. They would put white people in blackface. And so to me, it was this really, really stark example of how our history classes back then, especially, were just whitewashed. Because that's a willful omission, because you cannot talk about Birth of a Nation in any type of detail without addressing the plot.
Right, context of it.
So if you decide to omit the plot, there's a reason you're doing that, right? And it feeds into this Canadian superiority complex, this white Canadian superiority complex, this white Canadian smugness about American racism. And because Canada is the country on the other side of the border from the country that has the high profile race problem, Canada casts itself as this country that's not racist, which, talk to anybody who's not white, whose family has been here for a lot of generations. See what they tell you. They'll tell you something different. Canada's very much like the person that smokes a pack a day, and they look at their next door neighbor that smokes 2 packs a day and say, "Oh man, well, you're gonna get emphysema." Well,
Yeah, and the person has cancer already, talking about other people.
yes, exactly. So that was the Birth of a Nation episode.
I also want to talk about some people in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, Kevin, and Leighton.
Yes. Which one is okay? Yes. Yeah. So Patrick and Kevin, basically, I had to use a lot of fake names in the book. My family, we all used real names. The people that I liked, or who like were just good at sports or whatever, and wound up like their government names out there. So I just kept their government names.
Mm-hmm.
Like the R&B singer Ray Robinson.
Yes.
You know, he's in the book because he was one of my high school football teammates. His government name's Rayon Henry, right? That guy was a phenomenal athlete. But anyway, yes, Patrick, Kevin, Leighton, and Leon. Let's go.
Leon's a whole. I want to talk.
Okay.
About Leon, but I wanted to highlight on the Patrick, Kevin, and Leighton. How close are you guys, and what was their relationship with you like? How was that for you?
Me and Patrick and Kevin are still very close. Leighton, I like Leighton. That's the other thing, because you get in these fights in high school, and some people you beef with forever, and other people you just kind of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So like Leighton's cool. Like we're not tight, but I see him, I say what's up. You know, we're cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Like his role in that fight, I didn't really take personally. He was just supporting his friend. You know.
So let's talk about Leon.
Yes.
Because you cover so much boxing and go, okay, all right. So I'm going, was this your first match?
With him, yes. Yeah, the first and only one. Yeah.
Well, so with your family, doing the research, were there any aha moments that came up when you dug into the background of your family, or were these things you grew up with, but doing the research, did you say, wow, I didn't know that, or I didn't know about that?
A lot of it was stuff I grew up with, and then some of these things were just stuff I unearthed. I'll give you an example. I'll give you 2 examples. You know, a lot of it revolves around my grandfather, my mom's dad. He was the one that's a musician. Really strong personality, really strong character, but also sort of a petty tyrant, troublemaker, grudge holder, you know? And he's in the middle of a lot of these family fights. And if they don't involve him at first, he jumps in because he has this thing where he has to be the center of attention, you know?
There you go.
And I'm not going to give you guys all the context for this because I want the people that haven't read it, I want them curious.
Yes.
So I want them to read it. But
you want to give them a tease.
There's a passage in the book. My mom's family's still in Chicago. My mom's probably 12 years old, where a mob enforcer offers to kill my grandparents' next door neighbors. Right? And so when my grandfather would tell this story, he would just kind of focus on the punchline, which is the point where the guy makes the offer to kill the neighbors, right? And when he would describe the mob enforcer, he didn't describe the guy in much detail. He would just describe him as a guy, just a mob guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was writing this book, I ran the story back by my mom. My mom was like, no, that was not just a mob guy. That was Marshall Caifano. If you Google Marshall Caifano, he wasn't just a mob guy. He was like sort of the premier mob enforcer in Chicago at that time. This little tiny guy is 5 feet tall, but extremely violent, right? And a long rap sheet, a long high body count, right? And so when you think about it that way, it changes the story, brings a lot more life to the story. Again, for my grandfather, for whatever, and I think he just felt like people our age wouldn't care about that detail. All we wanted was the punchline. But it's the difference between saying my next door neighbor plays some professional hockey and saying my next door neighbor is Austin Matthews. You see what I'm saying? This is the level of mob enforcer we're talking about.
Jeez.
Right? And so when my mom told me that, it made a lot more sense. And it just brought the story to life. And 2, there's a point where my grandfather shows me this picture of his father back in Marshall, Texas, and their kids, and they have just built a schoolhouse right? So it's all these boys and a teacher in this schoolhouse that they have just built. And he shows me this picture. He's like, that's your great grandfather. And the guy next to him is Scott Joplin's nephew. And Scott Joplin was probably the first American pop star. He played piano. He wrote The Entertainer, Maple Leaf Rag. There was a black theater company in Toronto recently that put on an opera called Tremonisha. Scott Joplin wrote that. So for like turn of the 20th century America, he was tremendously famous.
Oh yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And here he is. He's the nephew of my great grandfather's. Sorry, he's the uncle of my great grandfather's best friend. And so Scott Joplin's great nephew was like the best man at my grandparents' wedding. But the thing was, my grandfather told that to me. He was like in his 90s. I ran that by my mom. She was like, I have never heard this. You see what I'm saying? So my grandpa had like, because he's a bit of a contrarian, so he would have all these stories that were fascinating because he's a musician. He himself was not famous, but he was around a lot of famous people. Right. But if you asked him to tell you a story, he'd be like, no, just because he's a contrarian. But if you wanted some attention, you'd be like, hey, I got this cool story. Yes, and so, but that detail about growing up around the Joplins made some other stories about my grandfather's upbringing make a lot more sense. So he's a guy that was learning to play piano as a 10-year-old while his sister was graduating high school. Mm-hmm. So my aunt wants to go to junior college. This is the 1930s in Chicago. There's not a lot of opportunities for Black women. But she's like, if I can get to junior college, I can get a degree, I can become a librarian. Otherwise, what are my choices? Like, I become a domestic, I clean hotels, whatever it is. But their parents were like, well, we can't afford junior college and piano lessons. Most of us would be like, all right, pay for junior college. My great grandparents were like, nope, we're paying for piano lessons. Edith, big sister, you can go work for the white people. Mm-hmm. And that was what happened. So, when my mom's generation, they would tell us that story, but they would frame it strictly as something, as pivoting on sexism.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. But now that I think about and it was a sexist decision to make, but I also think about the fact that these guys grew up with the Joplins. So now, again, this is like your best friend's uncle now is LeBron James.
Right, the guy.
So now you're thinking about, what can happen if my son plays basketball?
Right.
Well, wait a minute. It's not just a hobby. He might become a superstar. So now that decision is still very sexist, it's not a decision any of us would make, but now I can have a better idea of what motivated it because they grew up so close to somebody, 1 degree of separation away from somebody who had made history, made a fortune playing piano. So like, why would they not think their son could do the same thing? It's very much like sports parents think today. Hope that answers your question, Dr.
Absolutely. No, great storytelling, Ryan.
Definitely. Well, I was curious, is there anything that you unearthed that didn't make the book that was something that, a story that you loved, but just didn't fit the storyline?
I mean, people would ask, like sometimes people have been like, Morgan, you put all your family's dirty laundry out there. Like, no, I didn't.
Right.
And again, especially as my mom's dad and my dad's mom are concerned, like they were just always up to something in terms of like messing with people, starting fights, making existing fights worse, all this. Like I could have written and what I didn't want this book to be was just, a listing of grievances because I wanted to tell a story that other people could take something from, So I put a couple of them like at the end of the story in the acknowledgments because there was a point where my grandfather had been drafted into the army for World War II. He's about to go to basic training, but he's not a fighter, my grandpa, like an actual, with guns and stuff. And so he would always tell us a story about, man, it was so lucky that just as I was getting ready to get on the troop train, I was crossing the street to go into the train station and a taxi cab ran over my foot. So I couldn't go to basic training. They had to send me home, and I got 2 months off. And when they brought me back, they put me in an office because I knew how to type.
Okay.
And, but my mom is like, that was not a coincidence.
Right.
He knew that one way or another, he was not going to basic training. So as he saw this cab coming, he stepped off the curb.
Come on.
Broken foot,
Yes.
There you go. And so there's stuff like that, or like my dad's mom was like, I had my son in the hospital. I couldn't afford the bill, so when it was time to leave, I just wrapped him up in blankets and smuggled him out of the hospital.
Wow.
Yes.
Stuff like this that didn't really fit the narrative of the book, the narrative structure, but
oh man,
they're worth telling.
Another line in the book that I really found, and especially knowing a little bit about you, I want you to expand on. It's on page 106. It says, compromising to keep the peace even when you know you're right.
Yeah, that was from the Birth of a Nation day in class.
But knowing a little bit, I know about you, and you're very passionate. How does that apply to Morgan today?
Well, one, in the context of like discussing Black history in a Canadian history class, and back then especially Canadian history just meant white history, and I could have argued with those people the entire day and they were never going to get it. And so what wound up happening was the teacher came up with a compromise and said, well, maybe the moviegoers were racist, but we can't discount, the role technology played in popularizing this film in Canada, which is a compromise. And we hear this all the time. There's two sides to the story, and the truth is in the middle. And the truth is not always in the middle. Often the truth is the truth. Often the truth is, even if there are elements to both sides in the truth is often closer to one side than it is to the other. And if you ask any sober, rational thinker about what made that movie so popular, right? If we want to do like percentage contributions to the popularity of that movie, it was not 50% technology and 50% racism.
Right.
80-20 racism at minimum.
Right.
But to keep the class moving, I had to compromise. So in that sense, it's a negative. But, like in the context of relationships, marriage, you wind up doing the same thing. Although it's less often you knowing you're right than you just thinking you're right. It's two very different things. But, you got to compromise to keep the peace and keep the thing moving. Because like, all right, so let me dig in and win this fight. All right, so you won the fight, but what did it cost? Was that fight worth winning? And that's one of the themes that runs through the book, again, because people ask me about the title, and I'm like, well, yeah, on the one level, it's about the fights we get into with each other, but it's also about like really counting the cost of those fights.
Right.
And the process of learning which fights are worth having, which fights you should walk away from, and what things are really worth fighting for. And so I hope that answers your question.
No, it absolutely does. Ryan, I got some more, but I know Ryan has some things he wanted me to ask. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, it just makes a lot of sense. Even with the book cover, family is the biggest word. And yes, we all have fights, but it's the family and people say you're stuck with, but really, it's the only people that you can fight toe to toe, and they're still going to be there tomorrow.
Yes, for the most part. Yes. Well, when you read my book, you'll see that some people. Yes. Because when you read my book, you'll see like what you said. There are some people in my family that think like that and are able to put the feud aside. They understand that there are some things bigger than the feud. There are other people in the family that are like, the feud is number one. Nothing is more important than the feud. Not even basic human dignity. You ask me to starve or choose the feud, I will starve because I ain't giving up the feud. But it depends on the person.
It gives people their life, though. It's the thing that they attach meaning to. It's like, without this, then I have nothing to talk about. Or it's like,
well, especially as like my mom's dad and my dad's mom got older, like they retired.
Yeah,
these fights were just something to do.
You know what I mean?
Because they weren't working anymore.
Yeah, beef. Let's have beef. Beef. Some beef, right? So we got some comments from the audience here. Moreland Allen says, is the book on Audible yet?
The book is on Audible. So if you are busy, a lot of us are on the run all the time. So you can download it on Audible. I am actually the audiobook narrator.
Nice. I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
So for you, for a couple of reasons. One, again, for you aspiring authors, you make more money because they pay whoever narrates the book, they got to pay. So it might as well be you, right? If you are somebody that can read with feeling, you know, read smoothly, because some authors just sound boring when they talk, so they got to get an actor.
Yes.
You know, but if you can actually read, if you got a personality, go ahead and do it because they're gonna have to pay somebody. It might as well be you, and it's just easier from a scheduling standpoint. Because if they had hired an actor, then they would have had to, because there's a director and there's editors, but then they also would have had to schedule with an actor. And if the actor's not busy until 2 years from now, well, then what are you going to do?
Wow.
Whereas with the author, you can just build it right into your schedule. And then with my book, I was having sort of the flip side of the problem that like Andre DeGrasse was having with his audiobook, in the sense that Andre was not the sprinter, Andre DeGrasse.
Yeah.
Andre was not the narrator, and the publisher had to find an actor, and they kept getting these American actors. And Andre and his, especially his manager, was like, "But this guy's Canadian."
Right. Let's at least start there.
Yeah, because it's not going to sound at all like Andre.
Not
because
going to get out of the starting block of that.
American, right? Yeah. Whereas with me, though, I was like, so much of this book takes place in the United States. So many of the characters are American. What I don't want is somebody who cannot do the accents, right?
Yes.
And like a lot of Caribbean Canadians, God bless you guys, y'all my cousins, you know, brothers, whatever. Some of y'all like think you can do an American accent, and I assure you, y'all sound as awkward doing American accents as Americans sound doing Caribbean accents. I always hear Caribbeans complaining, how come they get Americans to do these accents? They can't do the accents. Man, how y'all think you sound? Like,
yes,
that's a two-way street.
All right. That's
like Idris Elba does a very, but you know, he's from England and his family, I think, is from Sierra Leone. He does a very good American accent. But like for the most part, people trying to do American accents sound very clumsy. So like my list of actors that I would have approved to do that audiobook, it was only two people. It was a guy named John Chase, who's mentioned early in the book, and Clark Johnson, who was on The Wire.
Yes.
Homicide: Life on the Street, you know, because he I think was born in Philly. His dad is his parents are American.
Right.
But other than that, I was like, don't get me one of these actors like who can't do the accents, trying to do the accents, and they wind up sounding like Amos and Andy. Like, I'm not interested in that.
Right. Yes.
So I did the audiobook.
So Marlon says, yes, perfect. I'm getting it now.
Thank you, Marlon.
And he says, I love that, how I like to listen to it. And he also says, nobody will tell your story better than you.
Exactly.
Hayden says, OMG, the cognitive dissonance required to be a racist.
Exactly.
If there's nothing else that Canadians have practice in, is yes.
Okay. Wayne Harris, what is up? Wayne says, being an American in Toronto, what are your thoughts on GTA Black community activism versus that in Chicago?
Good question. And I don't know that I come to it from that angle. Only because like I grew up out in the suburbs in Mississauga. And so when I was growing up, like one of the police shootings I remember, and you guys probably remember, Dr. Bob, you might remember this, the Lester Donaldson shooting, right? But that was something that happened in the city, you know, and that was when like people like Dudley Laws first popped up on my radar, you know, but I was probably like 11 or 12 when that happened. But that was still also like a very downtown Toronto, in the city type phenomenon to me. We didn't get as much of that in Mississauga, at least not at my age. And one of the things my mom had always had a hard time wrapping her head around, but this is because she grew up in Chicago, is that, you know, if she'd grown up in New York, it would be different, or Miami. But to the extent that my mom would meet Jamaicans in Chicago, like in the 50s, can I swear on this show? They didn't fuck with rank and file black people. Do you see what I'm saying? Especially if white people were around. They were like, I look black, but I'm Jamaican. I'm special. I'm exotic. Right? Obviously in New York, it was something completely different. right? You go ask Marcus Garvey if he fucks with black people. Hell yeah, right? I am the Pan-Africanist, right? But the ones you would meet in Chicago, like they made a point of keeping their distance from regular rank and file American black people until like sort of post-civil rights movement. Then they were like, oh, we want to join the team now, right? So to my mom, it was very strange to see like Jamaicans kind of like setting the tempo for what it meant to be black in a given area. Because the ones she grew up with, like, y'all did not want to hang out with us. Y'all thought y'all were better than us. And so like when Dudley Laws would hit the screen, she'd be like, well, what do you know? But this was just her way of thinking, because that's, again, if she'd grown up in New York, it would be very different, because she'd be like, oh yeah, it's a multicultural black community, but nobody's really here saying I look black, but I'm not black, you know. But in Chicago, because there are a lot fewer non-American black people, you could play that game. But one of the things I also took from that was here in Toronto, where being African American makes you different from other black people, I am not going to play that card, especially to impress white people. Oh, I look like them, but I'm not them. Treat me different. Treat me better. Right? Like,
Wayne has a great follow-up question. He goes,
you know what I'm saying?
as a Mississauga man now married to a Pickering woman, do you fight over which city has the best oxtail or other things?
Okay, speaking of, remember we were talking about compromise before?
Yeah.
So when we were getting married, like, I'm from Mississauga. She's from Pickering. Now her family lives in Ajax. They're like, all right, we got to compromise on a place to live. The compromise was I moved to Ajax. There's your compromise. That's meeting in the middle when you're married. My wife is very, very attached. Do you guys want to hear a story?
Bring it. Bring it.
I've never told this story in public before, but because I know there's a lot of Caribbean Canadians listening, yes, you guys will get this story. All right. So my wife, and again, for people just joining the conversation, my background is not Caribbean. Okay, my family is from the United States.
Yeah.
As many generations back as you can count. Before that, we were from Africa. We were a Black American family. So my wife sends me to a restaurant called Yardies to get some food.
I know. Okay.
And so my wife, she's like, she wanted ackee and saltfish, and then she also wanted some dumplings. Okay. And so
gonna be good.
I go there. So I order the ackee, I order something, and then the guy's like, you want food? So the Jamaicans already know where this is headed, but let me set it up, right? So now I'm like, of course I want food. I'm in a restaurant. I want food. Because to my brain, food is a very general term. To Jamaicans, it means something very specific.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And I also order some dumplings. I get it home, and my wife is like, where's the rest of the dumplings? I'm like, what are you talking about? I got one for everyone. It's like, how dare you bring me these boiled bananas? What am I supposed to do with this? I was like,
yes.
I was like, but the guy asked me if I wanted food, and she's like,
Ryan,
yeah.
Ryan doesn't happen much. Ryan's crying.
Listen, I would say I'm born in Canada,
Yeah.
and my parents are Jamaican. That same scenario,
Yes,
totally threw me off, because I'm watching people ahead of me order ackee and saltfish and food. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
thank you.
Like,
All right, so next time,
what does that come with?
yes, okay, perfect. I got an actual Jamaican now that can go defend me to my West Indian in-laws, because they think I'm crazy for not realizing that food means something specific. Like, how was I supposed to know that like food was specific and not general?
Morgan,
But
how did you come up with the title?
My Fighting Family was originally just the title of a chapter, and I didn't have a title for the book. And then my agent was like, here, bump My Fighting Family up to the front of the book. We'll make it the title. And then she also came up with the subtitle, The Borders and Bloodlines and the Battles That Made Us. But that's how we came up with it. Because like the first full, there's a prologue, and then the first full chapter is about, I just get right into it about my grandparents in the all-out brawls. Pardon me?
How much of a challenge, if any, was it selling this idea to your publisher?
No, that was easy for a couple of reasons. One is just the concept, fits in with a lot of books that are already out there, but is also very different, and that's what publishers love. Like they want something that's unique, but like not too different from what's already proven, So they like that. And then two, one of the people making decisions on this was a guy named Scott Sellers, he wears a lot of hats at Penguin Random House. One of them is head of marketing, but we also used to work out at the same gym. So when I quit my job at the Star, and I was on Twitter tweeting about how I was quitting my job at the Star, he was DMing me about, hey, well, what are you thinking about doing? Let's meet up and talk about some ideas. And I was already playing with these ideas. So we met up for coffee and I laid it out to him. He's like, perfect, get me a proposal in 3 weeks. And that's how it went. Which is to say that so much of even this industry, it helps to be very good, but it's more helpful just to know people.
Yeah.
Which is in that way, it's just like any other industry.
But you built up track record. I mean,
yeah, and it's also different too. Because I was a journalist for so long, and I still am a journalist, because I worked at the Star for so long, people in even the publishing industry, like they knew who I was. So I wasn't just some stranger. So now if I was like an engineer coming to them with this story, they'd be like, cool, but who are you?
Yeah.
I don't know you're any good. Who do you know? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like the publishing people to this, they know the newspaper people. They're not the same business, but they're similar. So they all know each other. So now here I come. They know I can write. They know that I know what a deadline is like. They know I can, I'm not going to burden the editors with like pages and pages of pages of like horrific writing that you got to tear down and rebuild.
Right.
So all of those things help. But yeah, knowing the right people always helps too.
What I want to see if you remember this moment, holding the first copy of the book in your hands.
So what happened was my editor, Jordan Ginsburg, he mailed it to me, and copy 0 is still in this house somewhere. But the other thing that happens is you get copy 0.
Yeah.
And then they send you a box full of books. So then it's like a shell game because they all look the same. And you don't know which one is which. So copy 0 is in here somewhere.
Yes.
I don't know that I could identify it anymore, but yeah, it's a special feeling, right? Because it's something you worked on for so long. Just for so long, it's just been an idea, and it's been words on a computer screen. Something very different to see it in real life and hold it in your hands.
So true.
I love the book because, again, I think before we went live, there's so much relatability no matter what side of the border you're on.
Yes.
Right? That's one of the things I love unique. And let's be honest, in our families, and people who look like us, conflict is there.
Mm-hmm. Well, two things. One, some of the feedback I get from people that have read the book, regardless of what their cultural background is my family is nothing like your family because we're not coming from where you're coming from, but my family is exactly like your family. And a lot of people can relate to, having like an overbearing grandparent. And one of the lessons in it for me is to like really make sure I keep checking myself as I get older, because I don't want to turn into what my grandparents were, what my mom's dad was, what my dad's mom was. People demand tribute, demand to be the center of attention all the time, and are willing to obliterate relationships just to feel like they're right, just to feel like they're on top, just to feel like they're still the center of attention. All that stuff's not worth it to me. Even my mom has said to me, like, this is not in the book, and my mom has said to me, if you catch me acting like my dad acts, tell me.
Right.
Tell me to shut up, or like the old folks say, you tell me to straighten up and fly right.
Mm-hmm.
You got to put me in a home, but don't let me treat you like my dad treats, his kids and his grandkids, who he just views as his underlings.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I learned in this process. I mean, it's been in my head for a while, but like it's really reinforced in the process of writing this book, is to really, as you guys read the book, you'll see my grandfather as somebody who just, as the years pass, just takes himself more and more seriously, to the point where he takes himself too seriously.
Yeah.
And then when that happens, like all hell can break loose, because the person that takes himself really, 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 really seriously, like you can't joke with them. Any little thing sets them off, and then they always got to prove I'm the boss of this family. I'm the silverback gorilla, blah, blah, blah. And this is how a lot of these fights, when you, Dr. Bob, you've seen it when you read the book, like this motivates a lot of these fights, is this desire to keep proving that you're in charge. Like, you're already the patriarch. Like, we all love and respect you. Just, let it happen. Like, you got to keep pounding your chest and twisting people's arms. But, my mom's mom and my mom's dad and my dad's mom, that's what they grew into. So I have to like guard against growing into that.
I'm looking forward to the day, and you're a recent father, that you get a chance to share with the younger one about this book.
Right.
And you know what? I'm
old enough for this book yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully she won't read it since she's about 18, 20, something like that.
I hope that I like to think big. I'd like to see this being read by lots of students, lots of people in general, like a student reader.
I hope so. So much of it depends on like getting the right person to read your book. Everybody wants Oprah to read their book, right? Because if Oprah starts talking about your book, buddy, you're set.
Right.
You're set. I think the challenge is that the playing field in journalism is shifting so rapidly. It's hard to like point to this as like, here, future journalists, why don't you guys have a career arc like his? Because like the career arc, like the career milestones I have, they're harder and harder for younger people to achieve because the big shops, they're shrinking, they're getting sold, they're getting consolidated. So it's harder to start out and get a foothold in the industry, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, and there's also just other ways to make that happen. Maybe it's funny. I just signed up for TikTok. Now they're about to ban TikTok. Right. Like, if they don't ban TikTok, maybe I'll do something like more regularly on just writing skill and see where that leads me. But we'll see.
YouTube, man. YouTube is pinnacle.
It still is. Good to know. It's hard to keep track, man.
It is. Ryan, any final comments? Because I know, Ryan, you always have things going on in your mind. Any last comments or questions?
Yeah, I'm curious. The title, My Fighting Family, of course, people are going to read that initially and think beef, and they always talk about, we always talk about conflict. But I'm curious, what is the takeaway that you'd want as a person reading this? Like, I don't want to say like they are going to get something specific, but I'm curious.
There is beef.
Yeah.
I don't want to lie to people about that. As I said, my family, there's beef. We serve it hot, But, there's a lot of takeaways. And one, from the standpoint, like if you're American and Black and you're used to reading great migration stories, keep in mind that for some of us, the Great Migration had one more step. So we went from the Deep South to Chicago. And for a lot of people, the Great Migration story ends in Chicago. Some people that went like from Chicago further north, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, etc. And some of us went further north and across the border. And so you can read this story as a Great Migration story, or you can read it as a Canadian immigration story. Because again, we think of Black immigrants to Canada. We think of people coming from like a long way away. We think of people coming from overseas. But there are some of us that drove to Canada, Took I-94 to Detroit.
There you go.
Took the Ambassador Bridge, 401, straight into Toronto.
There you go.
So you can read it as a Canadian immigration story and just get a sense, if you are into Black history, of how rich and diverse Canada's Black histories are. And that like our Black history in Canada is itself a mosaic of all these different types of people that have come here for different reasons.
True.
And, as far as people's families are concerned, I hope people walk away from the book, again, with a better sense of what things are worth fighting for, which fights are worth walking away from, and the idea that, like, no matter how important you think a fight is, there's something that's more important.
I like that.
And again, there are people in my family that understand that, and the people who don't understand it. Which one of those people, when you finish the book, like which one of these people would you rather be? Would you rather be my mom, or would you rather be my grandpa, or rather be, my Granny Mary? Two people who again put the feud ahead of everything, Is that how you want to live? Is that how you want to deal, with your relatives? So those are, I think, the big things, as well as, again, if you grew up in Toronto when I did, a lot of it, I just wanted it to be like a period piece for people that grew up in the 80s and 90s around Toronto. Just going to read it and be like, oh, the Power Move show on CKLN. I remember that.
Yeah.
WBLK, Hooker and Dawn, DJ Hooker and Dawn.
Dawn, yes.
At the top 8 at 8 on WBLK. I remember that. The Quiet Storm. I remember that. Different World. Arsenio Hall show on CFMT. I remember that.
When you put the CFMT, I want now you're talking.
So I also wanted it to be, a walk down memory lane for people who grew up when I grew up.
I love it.
All those things.
Yeah,
well, before we let you go, Hayden, one of the family, I've held back. Yes, Ali or Jack Johnson, who's the GOAT?
They both are for different reasons. Like Johnson had to work a lot harder to get his title shot than Ali did, because Johnson was dealing with the color line. By the time Ali came along, it was just understood that a black person, like post Rocky Marciano, like the heavyweight champion, was going to be an American black person. That was that. But like Jack Johnson had to literally chase Tommy Burns from North America to England to Australia to get this title shot. Interesting thing about Jack Johnson, to bring it back to Canada. Do you guys know what the first thing Jack Johnson did once he won the heavyweight title? Is he redrew the color line. Right?
Interesting.
So there was a guy from Weymouth, Nova Scotia, named Sam Langford. Look up Sam Langford. Black guy. Mostly fought out of Boston. So he and Jack Johnson had fought when they were both on their way up. Jack Johnson won. Jack Johnson wins the title. Sam Langford's like, where's my rematch? And Jack Johnson essentially says, there is no rematch because I'm the black champion. And I'm paraphrasing here, but this is the idea. He's like, I'm the champion. I'm black. There is no money in me fighting other black people.
Wow.
The money is in me, but it's true, beating up on the white guys. Because everybody. So Jack Johnson, his title reign is what birthed the phrase Great White Hope. Because after Jack Johnson wins the title, like these promoters, they just start beating the bushes for any big white guy that they think can knock off Jack Johnson. So Jack Johnson gets rich. Like, yeah, he can go back to fighting the black guys, whatever. And also, like promoters, they were not eager, and boxing organizing bodies were not eager to see the heavyweight title just stay within the black community.
Right.
Right. So Jack Johnson's like, hey, there's no money in a Sam Langford rematch. And so I'm not going to fight you, Sam Langford. You can go back, fight for the world color title. And Jack Johnson goes and knocks out this long succession of Great White Hopes. But that's where we get the phrase in English, Great White Hope, was from Jack Johnson. And Ali, like, the difference with Ali, and I think people forget this because we're so used to Ali being the greatest. You go back and read contemporary accounts of the Ali Liston fight, leading up to that Liston fight. Most people thought Liston was going to kick the shit out of Muhammad Ali.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because here's Liston, this muscular, scowling ex-convict who had just knocked Floyd Patterson into next week 2 times in a row.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because when we think about boxing, we have like ideas about what boxers should be, and it blinds us to the reality.
Mm-hmm.
So here's Liston. He's 6'1", and he's about 208, something like this. I could probably look up what the actual weights were for that fight. But here's Ali. He is 6'3" and significantly faster than Liston. But like the thinking heading into that fight was that Liston was just too strong.
Mm-hmm.
And that fight starts, Ali is just too fast. Liston can't touch him, right? Which an objective observer watching these two guys leading into this fight should have been able to see. But we were so wrapped up in this idea of what boxers should be. Here's Liston. He's mean. He's tough. Ex-con. Here's Ali. Yeah, he's an Olympic gold medalist, but whatever. He's sort of a upper working class family. He hasn't had the rough life that Liston has had, blah, 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 blah. He's pretty. He talks a lot. There's no way. But boxing is a fight, but it's also a sport. It's an athletic contest. And Ali was just so much. It is obvious to us now. But back then, it was not obvious to people, right? To the point that, and I'm off on a tangent here, but like you guys, the more your audience interacts with me, the more you'll learn I'm a boxing nerd and I'm prone to these tangents. Go read a book called Blood Brothers by Randy Roberts, who has a Jack Johnson biography, and Johnny Smith. It's all about the relationship between Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. Wow. And one of the things you learn is that even going into this fight, Muhammad Ali is essentially already a member of the Nation of Islam. Mm-hmm. Tight with Malcolm X. Malcolm X is falling out with Elijah Muhammad at this point. But like Elijah Muhammad and like the greater Nation of Islam, they are feeding Ali with a long spoon. They are reluctant to claim him in public because going into this fight, they think Liston is going to knock him out. And they don't want to embrace him in public because they think he's going to lose. And they don't want to be associated with a loser. Wow. Right? Ali goes out and beats up on Liston. Then all of a sudden, oh yeah, he's our guy. We love him. Look, we're gonna, because you cash his play back then. Yeah, come to the temple in Chicago. We're gonna give you a new name. Blah blah blah. But heading into that fight, they were like, "We don't like Malcolm. It's cool, Malcolm. You can hang out with him because we don't like you either. Yes, whatever, right? Because you're hanging out with a loser." And then after he wins, oh, we love you so much. Come to our temple. Nice. Have a ceremony. But yeah, if you guys get a chance, go read. Blood Brothers.
All right.
And if you don't have time to read it, go watch it there's a Netflix documentary.
Marlon has become a big fan. Your boxing book would sell. Write it. I'll buy it just by how you're comparing.
Marlon, buy 10,000 copies and we're in business.
But he also says, I just bought your book on Audible and we'll start listing today.
I appreciate it. Leave that 5-star review. We got to show the algorithm what's what. You know how it goes.
Love that.
Well, Morgan, look, I want to say thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will be doing. Hey, family, whether it's I like holding and reading. This is what I do. Holding and reading. Thank you so much. Is the best place for people to interact with you right now Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram. I'm still on Twitter. Not as much. I thought I would have phased Twitter out completely by now, but no. Okay. I'm still there. Instagram is good. And Threads, because that's Instagram's cousin. Yeah. I'm there. LinkedIn, I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm not on Facebook anymore because I got hacked a couple years ago, and Facebook they were so unhelpful. Mm-hmm. I was just like, I'm just going to delete the account because you guys are not helping me. So, but Facebook, Instagram, Twitter,
Threads,
LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I should be Morgan P. Campbell on all those platforms.
Any final words you want to share with our family today?
If you get the chance, read the book. I am platform agnostic. From a business standpoint, I'm like, go get the book at the bookstore because it's more expensive at the bookstore. So my 10%, the 10% of each copy that I'm contractually entitled to is a few cents higher if you get it at the bookstore than if you get it online. But whatever, man. If you're interested in the book, get it wherever you can afford it.
Yeah.
Audiobook and ebook are probably the most affordable. Amazon Canada, I think they have discounted it some.
Yeah.
Went from $35 to $30. Amazon US might still be $26.
Yeah.
But it might be a little cheaper now, or you can just go to a bookstore and
order
it. Tell them to get it in. But yeah, I'm grateful for any and all readers. You guys have any questions? Oh, and I'm also running a promotion. So what's happening is,
all right.
So you've read the book, Dr. Vibe.
Yep.
There's a chapter near the end called the 90-minute slow jam tape.
Yeah, I loved that. It was so good.
Okay. And so most of that chapter takes place in the bedroom of a young lady, and we're there listening to a 90-minute slow jam tape in the mid-90s. Okay. Yep. So I am telling fans, potential fans, future fans, that if I hit a certain sales target, I will create a 90-minute slow jam tape and put it on Spotify.
Okay.
So it's very much like the pledge drives on WNED and PBS.
Remember those two hosts,
Goldie.
Oh,
yeah.
Gosh.
And so we need your pledge drives. If 10 more you pledge, you'll get this best of Frankie Valli box set CDs like this, right? We'll get back to the program.
I love the analogy.
When I hit the sales target, I'm gonna put the 90 minutes tape on Spotify. So if this conversation hasn't been enough, understand I'm a certified slow jam scholar, and I'm gonna put the 90-minute slow jam tape on Spotify if I hit a certain sales target.
Yeah. So I guess if you know what, would love to. You know what? I got to see if Debbie Sims is still alive.
Maybe.
She hosted the BLK Slow Jams.
Yeah.
And Debbie Sims, and she was so good at it.
Yeah, man. Good question.
I got some research. I got to see if we can find. And if I get her, I want to make sure you're on the conversation too, because I think that would be.
Listen. She had such a transformative effect on my life because as I explained in the book, like, you know, I was like 16, 17, like all these nights I should have just been asleep. I'd be up. I'd go to bed at 10, but go to sleep at 12:30, because the rest of the time I'd just be in bed, laying down, listening to the Quiet Storm on my little clock radio.
Yeah.
But that was how I really, you know, there's my parents' collections, but that's also how I started learning about a lot of this old music, especially early in the night on the Quiet Storm. They would play the Isley Brothers or whatever.
We should chat about this offline. I'd love to meet my dad because he is actually a member of the Vinyl Record Collectors Association.
Wow.
And he is a member of their Hall of Fame. You want to see, he had a man cave before a man cave.
Yes.
And it's all vinyl. It's
that generation, they invented the man cave. They just didn't have a name for it, but yeah, those guys.
Like you want to go see, my dad still has a Sony TC377 reel-to-reel player.
Yeah, and they had to have more of that because the TVs weren't as big.
Yeah.
So if you're like the man, all right, you work 40 hours a week, you're a mechanic, you're at the, like my dad, airplane factory, whatever. My time is my time. Now you feel that time watching sports, but back then, what did you have, right? You had the record player, you had the reel-to-reel. Going in the basement, don't bug me. Right?
Yeah, Macintosh, amplifiers. He still has all this stuff. Okay, we got to talk about this. It'd be great for you two to meet. But look, thank you so much. All the best to you and the family.
Thank you guys for having me, and I really appreciate you thinking of me, man. Always.
No problem. Appreciate it. And as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Yes. Remember to give yourself grace.
All right.
We'll be in touch. Thanks, brother.
Take care, guys.
Have a great day. All right, family. Ryan?
Yeah, love that. Definitely gonna grab that and check it out.
Yeah, that was, I really appreciate Morgan so much. And really, again, family, I'd say do this. Go for it.
Hey, get both.
Yeah, really. And
Marlon, listening to it.
I think one of the things that is a great experience when someone comes on the show, if they have something they're offering or they've got a product or service, and when you purchase it in real time.
Yeah, I love that.
That's huge.
Yes.
No, that is really huge. So I want to just say much thanks for doing that. So what's coming up for the rest of the week? Gala?
I don't think any galas are this week. I hope not. It's more, hey, Saturday, for those that want to pitch to Dragon's Den, the auditions are happening. So we are going back down to CBC Studios. So I'm just going to be there cheering people on because I pitched last time in February. So it's really supporting those that have ideas. Even if you feel you're going to get beat up by the Dragons, remember, get your story out. You're pitching to the producer. So they just want to know about your story. So don't let it scare you.
You know what's actually interesting too? I was in a conversation about 2 years ago, and a bunch of summer employment providers, I was one of them. One of the people that was pitching for intern help was from the producer of Dragon's Den. And after I shared what I did, she contacted says, hey, we'd love to get one of our dragons on the show you do about fathers. And we ended up again interviewing Vincenzo.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, we had a conversation with him on the show, but I should reach out to her and say, I don't think about that. All right.
Maybe she'll pop into your show this week and say it's the last auditions. So for season 19 that's coming up, this is the last chance to pitch your business.
So, Ryan, well, let me ask you a question. If you had a chance, I'm going to put it out there. Is there any of the dragons that you would like to align with?
unfortunately, the dragon that I would want to pitch 1-to-1 with isn't on the show anymore. So Jim Trevelling, because he's
okay.
like big into franchising. I've always
right,
wanted to
Boston
franchise.
Pizza.
Yeah, so him for sure. Robert Herjavec.
I did I tell you I met him one day?
No, I think you mentioned it, but
yeah I can't remember the place we were at. We're eating, and he was there with his family. And somewhere I've got a picture of him but he was a really nice guy.
Yeah,
really
same. I got to meet him, and funny enough, we detailed his car with Detailing Nights. So
did you have a picture of that?
No, because he
come on, man.
Listen, when I met him, I was detailing his business partner's car. Right. And so he came back from lunch. Was like, "Oh, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh, we're detailing cars." He's like, "Okay, mine's next." And then he was gone.
He just said, "Mine's next."
So I didn't get to like have a picture with him or anything.
That, man. Or even take a quick little, next time. Yes. Speaking, there'll be a next time. Absolutely. All right, family, we are done for today. So let's close it up. You're seeing where you can watch replays of this at the bottom. What else? So a number of things. Okay, let's do this. Remember, Black Marriage Day, Sunday, March 24th, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at La's Authentic Cuisine, 48 Main Street North, Markham. There's the URL address to buy tickets, also the email. Also on most platforms, I've put the details of this detail in the comments section. Always please subscribe to the Dr. Vibe channel on YouTube and Instagram. Also follow the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. If you want to get a hold of Gala King, RyanOneilKnight.com, LinkedIn, Ryan Oneil Knight, Instagram, Ryan.Knight.99, and then work with me. I like that. Work with me. Let's get direct. Work with me at RyanOneilKnight.com. So what else do we got? Places you can get a hold of me, website, the drvibeshow.com, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, The Dr. Vibe Show. And then we have Instagram at the drvibeshow, X at drvibeshow, email dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. Anything else? I don't think we've got anything else. I don't think. Oh, of course, advertise business, product, or service. Email me and join the Discord group. Ryan, you had something else before we shut it down. What up?
No. Thank you again to Morgan for being on.
Yeah, great conversation.
Here, great, engaging. And remember, before you leave. Help us with the algorithm.
Yes, help us with the algorithm. And as I said, people, definitely follow me on YouTube. I'm posting almost every day YouTube shorts from previous conversations, and they're getting some good reaction. Friday show scheduled to have Andrea Pierce.
Oh, nice. From Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub?
Yes, in Ottawa, who's very involved in the African Canadian community. She is scheduled to be on. So looking forward to that. And that's it. So as always, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, respect. And don't just manage your time, manage your energy. And remember to give yourselves grace. And I think we're done. See you on Friday.